today. Thank you for being here with us today, and a good day and good evening wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining us today to talk about AI roles and emerging technologies. We're very happy to be here with you today. Before I start with some of the housekeeping for this webinar, I wanted to introduce our speakers. We have two speakers here with us today on the content expert side. We have Sherry Yang, who is a content developer at Microsoft and focused on introductory machine learning concepts. She is at Microsoft corporate office in Washington, and she lives with her dog, Teddy. We also have Ivor Berry, who is the content developer for AI engineering and also associated certifications there. Ivor has been with Microsoft for 6 years, working on various technologies across Office, IoT, which is Internet of Things, and also Azure Bot Service. So thank you for being here, our two speakers, our two experts. And before we get to them, I wanted to just highlight how this webinar will work. We have 2 pauses where we will pause for your questions. One will be after Sherry goes through her content, and then we'll pause before we introduce Ivor for his content that he's sharing today. So you are welcome to come off mute to ask questions at that time, or put your questions in the chat and we'll be monitoring that. Additionally, you can turn your camera on and join us in person that way, in person virtually, if that makes sense, and have your questions ready and to engage with us. Otherwise, if you could mute your microphone just so we don't get any feedback during the presentation. This webinar is being recorded today so that you can have access to it after today's call. And thanks again for being here. So at this time, I would love to turn it over to Sherry Yang. Sherry, thanks for joining us.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having us here today. So I'll go over our goals for today. We're here from Microsoft to talk about building your Azure AI knowledge. So I'm going to share a brief introduction of AI and help us orientate ourselves to what Azure AI services are, and tee up the conversation for how you can use Microsoft Learn certifications to build a solid foundation of knowledge. And then in the second half, we'll have my teammate Ivor discuss more about how to level up with the Azure AI engineering learning journey. He'll also show you some of the Azure AI products in action, which will be really neat. And then we'll have more time for questions at the end. So when we ask what is artificial intelligence, everyone probably has a lot of thoughts on what when they hear the words artificial intelligence. For us, when we're talking about AI, we're talking about the capability of a computer system to mimic human cognitive functions, such as learning and problem solving. So through AI, a computer system uses math and logic to simulate the reasoning that people use to learn from new information and make decisions. So I find it helpful to think of AI as a couple of components, which we see inside the rectangle, the white rectangle. Together, those multiple pieces in the rectangle try to do what the human learning and problem-solving piece on the left outside of the rectangle does. At a general level, AI works by using machines to take actions based on predictions rather than humans writing exact instructions to tell it what to do next. So machine models, we can think of them like math equations, which we can customize for specific use cases to provide outputs of predictions. So if we look at the person with the gears in the brain, and we look at the kind of the graph, it's those two really components, the machine learning with the data customization, that then becomes a model that we see the person working at the computer. And developers can use these machine learning models and bake them into all sorts of apps and software. And that's where then everyone publicly, we kind of see the laptop at the end, can use these applications to automate processes. And a quick example of a machine learning model would be like an equation that takes in weather data and provides a prediction of how much money the ski resort might make that day. So then the developer can train that machine learning model and make it available on a website to the ski resort team. And the ski resort team would use the predictions to know how many people maybe to staff a day, something like that. We could go to the next slide. Yeah, awesome. So there are several terms that get used when we talk about AI. So we can think of AI as the big bucket and machine learning as a method or way of achieving the goal of AI, which is to mimic human intelligence. So within all of machine learning, we have a method of addressing more complex cases, and that's deep learning models, which use multiple layers of algorithms to create solutions. Uh, and and then within deep learning, recently, you might have heard a lot of buzz in the news about generative AI or ChatGPT, models where you can talk to a chatbot and receive all different kinds of output. And Ivor and I just published some learning material on generative AI. We're not going to go into it today, but there's a link at the end of the presentation on that. Um, and so if we go to the next slide, awesome. The key AI workloads that we're talking about, we can think of AI solutions in terms of workloads that they support. So products are built around these workloads to solve for needs in our environment. And the 6 we have highlighted here, I'll go through them. They're discussed further in the learning material. Um, and so machine learning, this is often the foundation for AI systems, and it's the way we teach a computer model to make predictions, like we talked about, and draw conclusions from data. The computer vision workload is the capability of software to interpret the world visually through cameras, video, and images. And here's when we talk about deep learning models, those complex use cases. Those deep learning models are in action for to make computer vision happen. We have natural language processing, the capability of a computer to interpret written or spoken language and respond in kind. And we have conversational AI, which are technologies like chatbots or virtual agents, which users can talk to. We have anomaly detection, which is the ability for machines to automatically detect errors or unusual activity in a system. And we have knowledge mining, which is the capability to extract information from large volumes of often unstructured data to create a searchable knowledge store. And what you'll find is that out in the real world, we see kind of a combination. So you might see an app that solves for both a computer vision and conversational AI workload. An example might be a car insurance chatbot that answers questions and then also verifies your identity by letting you upload a photo of your driver's license. So things like that, we often see these workloads uh, in action together. Um, if we could go to the next slide. Great. So, um, all right. So our goal at Microsoft is to empower every individual and organization on the planet to achieve more. That's our mission statement, that brand mission statement. But we do that with, one way we do that is with our cloud technology stack. So when people hear the term cloud, sometimes they only think of storage. But the cloud refers to a lot more. It's a network of remote servers that are connected to the internet. And when we're talking about the power of the cloud, it's very much about the power of various services. So we kind of group them as software as services, platforms as services, infrastructure as a service. And these services allow businesses and organizations to access the same powerful technology that large companies use. So the backbone of Microsoft Cloud is Azure. And we can think of Azure as a collection of services for developers and businesses. I like to think of it like a cooking cart where users can pick and choose their ingredients they want to use to make their own dishes. So we're getting into what is Azure AI specifically. Uh, some of the services that are in the kind of the ingredient cart support AI workloads. So we can think of all Azure AI services as belonging to these three groups: applied AI services, cognitive services, and the machine learning platform. And so applied AI services are scenario-based services. Cognitive services are customizable AI models that developers can build into applications. And the machine learning platform really includes this uh, user interface where there's a low code drag and drop, um, uh, multiple tools offered. And particularly with machine learning tools, we have Auto ML and Designer. Those are two products. And Auto ML can solve for classification, regression, and forecasting tasks, while Designer can solve for additional workloads. And you don't have to know how to categorize the services. The important thing to remember is that Azure AI services all up are like building blocks. So in a bit, Ivor is going to speak to how these services can be implemented. Uh, for now, we're going to go and take a look at responsible AI. So hand in hand with using Azure AI services is using them with Microsoft's responsible AI principles in mind. I'm grateful that Azure AI leads the conversation on ethical AI practices, and there are 6 concepts to keep in mind when developing an AI system. And there's a lot more information about these principles um, in the learning material. Um, and so I see we're running a little on time, so let's go to how to gain skills and understand more about Microsoft AI services. So some of you might have heard or gotten Microsoft certifications before, or for others, this might be new information. Microsoft certifications are exams designed to validate technical knowledge and give you the ability to really indicate that you're interested in future job roles. So the exams are tied to learning material that we write as content developers. And this learning material includes reading material, hands-on labs, and other ways to learn. And you can learn the material without getting certified, but there's some good reasons to get the certification. And earning a Microsoft certification is a globally recognized evidence of real world skills. So the Microsoft certification showcases your commitment to keeping pace with changing technology and positions you for increased skills and earning potential in your professional roles, potentially. And so the ones that we're going to be focusing on today are the Azure AI Fundamentals cert, which I will speak to next, and the Azure AI Engineering cert, which Ivor will speak to. But just to keep in mind that Microsoft has certification paths for many technical job roles outside of AI as well. And the goal of the fundamentals material, like Azure AI Fundamentals, is for students to be able to identify, understand, and describe technologies. And the objective for role-based material, like Azure AI Engineering, is to certify that a student knows how to implement or build with those technologies. And these certification courses can be taken several ways: online, self-paced, or with instructors. And there's more links at the end of this presentation with more information. Um, all right. And so what is the AI Fundamental Certification? There's no, you don't have to know anything. There's no prerequisites uh, for the AI Fundamental Certification. It's also known as AI 900, like in the image below. Um, So you can start with this one, or you can take other courses, other learning material before the course. It's up to you. Um, and so knowing what we like to say is that knowing the course material, um, this course material is foundational to the AI engineering course. And so what we like to cover in this course is AI workloads and responsible AI, visual tools for machine learning, computer vision applications, and natural language processing and applications. And so this exam is designed for candidates with both technical and non-technical backgrounds. Data science and software engineering experience are not required. However, having an awareness of cloud basics and client server applications is helpful in orientating yourself to the learning material. All right, and next step. So now we're going to explore AI engineering and see some services in action. And later you can go to the certifications link and get more information. You can identify which certification course is right for you and start your learning journey. We'll do a quick pause if there's any questions, and then we can move on to the second portion.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you for all the great information. And as she mentioned, we do want to pause now for questions. I don't see any in the chat yet, so I just want to mention to the audience, feel free to put questions in the chat, or you can come off mute, even come on camera if you're willing, and let us know what questions that you may have. Uh, to get us started, maybe I'll start with one or two. You mentioned, Sherry, that the certification you just went through is the AI Fundamentals, Azure AI Fundamentals course and certification that you earn when you learn this material and take the exam. Is and you also mentioned that having some basics on cloud is really helpful. So would you is there a prerequisite for the Azure AI Fundamentals course or other recommended courses to take before it?
That's a great question, Debbie. Thanks. So
Mhm.
there are several fundamentals courses, and one of them that is most popular, along with kind of the AI fundamentals course, is the Azure Fundamentals course, which really gives an introduction to all those cloud basics, to and really digs into all of the pieces when we think of what Azure services are all up, and uh, and so that's another great resource. And so those links are all at the bottom of this presentation we're going to share out later. And you can go and explore which one of the paths might be right for you. And what's interesting to note is that our fundamentals courses, they don't, none of them have prerequisites, but it's nice to have a little outside reading maybe before you start the course. For our role-based courses, which Ivor is going to touch on next, it's really great to get hands-on experience along with taking the learning material. And so um, Ivor will share more.
That's a great point. And I know that's something New Horizons, who's hosting this webinar, can definitely help with as well as uh, walking through examples, real life examples when you're taking the course. So that's something I wanted to mention at that point is at this point as well. I wanted to also see if there were any questions that that you would typically get around the AI fundamentals for Azure, and see if there was anything, Sherry, that was top of mind as you're thinking about this audience and how they're starting their learning journey. I'm
Yeah,
putting you on the spot.
no, this is that's great. Thanks, Debbie. I think one of the things that I do often see when we do these presentations, kind of at our Microsoft events, are questions about One, in the beginning of the presentation, I talked about a lot of different terminology, separating kind of AI, machine learning, what all of deep learning, and then also kind of getting into workloads and products. I think differentiating all of these pieces is something that folks have asked for additional reading material on. So one of the things that we really focus on with the AI fundamentals course is there is that introduction to workloads, but then we really get into the Azure technologies and how they are used, and then there are hands-on labs in the course. And so there's some pieces of really foundational material that you might want to get reinforce your learning by having some um, outside reading on kind of client server relationships or like software basics. And so a question that we might get is kind of what other resources or links. And so I'd be happy to share those in the chat. And then the other piece would just be kind of of the at the end of the course, the certification process. What is that? And so there's a whole portal, and it's an exam that you would sign up for that's an hour long, and the questions are multiple choice and or in that vein. There's a couple of different ways that the questions are organized, but uh, the way the ability to kind of complete the exam is as really possible by studying all the learning material that we provide. And that's a little bit different than for the role-based courses where that outside kind of hands-on experience is really encouraged so that you have some background of kind of how these tools are implemented. But I guess I would just highlight that the goal of the fundamentals courses is to be able to uh, describe and understand concepts. And it's not really getting into, okay, here are those step-by-step ways you would implement a solution. That's really where what Ivor's going to talk about comes in. The role-based courses come in.
That's a great explanation. Thank you for that, Sherry. And I do, yeah, want to point out we have fundamentals courses, which really start more at the beginning, still, maybe not the very beginning of technology, but at the beginning of that product. And then we have associate level as well as advanced level. So I'll now introduce Ivor Berry, who will be talking about the AI engineer, which is, I believe, Ivor associate level, and then that's part of our Azure AI portfolio. Ivor, thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, Debbie, and thank you, Sherry, for the great introduction to AI fundamentals. If you want to move on to the next slide, the content that I'm going to be talking about is AI engineering, and Debbie, you're correct that it is a associate level. There's currently no expert level to AI engineering on Azure, but that's not to say that it won't be coming some point down the line. I do want to touch briefly on the full AI portfolio first. The AI portfolio is quite a bit bigger than most people believe. Debbie, if you move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. Oh, there we go. Is much bigger than we believe. So a lot of the content that Sherry had talked about is the machine learning platform, and then the different functionality that is covered in the fundamentals course. Things like natural language processing and conversational AI. But it's important to see that Azure AI is really a huge set of services that are built upon Azure and deeply integrated in all sorts of different applications and platforms that are available. On the base level, we have the Azure Machine Learning, where we provide data science scientists and developers the tools to build, train, and deploy models. It helps developers with a huge set of domain-specific pre-trained models There's over 30, I think, across vision, speech, language, and decision making. There are AI applications, like specific services for professional developers. For example, we have Azure Bot Service, which allows you to create those chatbots that Sherry had talked about through conversational AI-based apps. There is Azure Search, which is a knowledge mining solution that's a cloud app search service with built-in AI capabilities. So it helps create those knowledge mining applications that you would want for your project or your company. There's something called Form Recognizer, which we'll talk about a little bit later as an example, that extracts all types of information from documents, whether those are forms or images or anything like that. It can extract key value pairs so that you can get data out of those documents or images in an automated fashion. And then there's also something called Video Indexer, which uses an in-depth like metadata extraction to pull data from video and audio content. Now, what's also interesting is that on top of that, there is this Power Platform, which empowers subject matter experts and business users to use the Azure AI Portfolio in a low-code point-and-click type solution. So, for example, you can build custom AI applications that can predict customer churn, automatically route customer requests, and handle some inventory management through something called Power Apps. Or you can build conversational AI through Power Virtual Agents. You can extract key phrases from documents and detect sentiment and content in customer reviews with things like Power BI. So there are a lot of options if you don't want to be in the developer space to still use the Azure AI Portfolio. Now, as we're talking further, I own the Azure Engineer Portfolio. So I'm going to be mostly focused on the Azure AI scenario-based services that we're seeing here. It is really tailored towards engineers, people who are familiar with code, and things like that. Move on to the next slide, Debbie. Thank you. So about the certification, there are similar types of things covered. We cover natural language processing, image and video processing, knowledge mining, which is things like Azure Search, and conversational AI applications. This is a much more in-depth look at the things that were introduced in the AI fundamentals. And this is where we go into the actual implementation of all of these different features and how to use them, how you can apply them to your problem and use them in your applications. Now, for the AI engineer certification, there are prerequisites for success. There is a expectation that candidates for AI engineering should be familiar with Azure services. So something like a fundamentals course would be great to gain familiarity with those services. We also expect these engineers to be proficient in a programming language, preferably C# or Python, and should know how to use REST-based APIs and SDKs. Knowing the AI fundamentals curriculum is a really great way to start that foundation for the AI engineering certification. The exam is intended for candidates with technical backgrounds and will involve understanding and completing of code during that exam. So I'd like to move on to examples. These examples are the most fun. They're the coolest way to see what you can do with Azure AI. So first, we're going to start with computer vision. There was a brief picture of what computer vision is in Sherry's, but I'd like to explore that a little bit further. So for example, here we have an image. This isn't just an image that you can take with your phone. This happens to be a stock image, but the effects are the same. Now, if this is submitted to the computer vision service within Azure AI, it can tell you all sorts of things. It can tell you what's in the photo and the likelihood that it is correct. So it uses a visual version of what's called optical character recognition, which you might have heard about, that extracts data from an image and tells us what they are. Now, Debbie, would you click on the photo, please? Oh, go back and click on the actual photo. So here's an example of what it would detect and what it thinks is in the photo, and then it gives a percentage of confidence in it. So for example, you can see that it detected several people, that it detected a couch that they're sitting on, detected a table, detected a laptop, and detected shoes. And so it can extract all sorts of interesting information from images that you then can use in your application to, I guess, do whatever you're trying to do. Moving on, I do want to talk about natural language understanding, because often language understanding is something computers are historically not terribly good at. We as humans are great at language. We've had language for many years, but computers are still kind of figuring that out. Now, getting a computer to understand language or extract information about that language can be pivotal in streamlining workflows and making things more easy to understand for us. For example, there could be a large company that gets a ton of feedback, and it'd be great to know what that feedback is talking about without having to read every single piece of feedback, and can get a general sentiment. So our first example here is an email. This is a made-up email that is sent to a restaurant regarding a customer who came by the previous week. The content of this doesn't matter. I'm not going to make you read it, but it does tell you about, or it is explaining what that person experienced at that restaurant, and gives it all sorts of other information. So if we go to the next slide, you can see the things that it can extract from that. So it extracts like people, locations, a person type, a date, time. It can extract all sorts of information so that your system can correctly categorize it and enable further follow-up based on what kind of feedback was given. There is, obviously, if you'd read the email, it was complaining about service. And so this would be a great candidate for a customer service representative to see what happened, see all the information provided, and then follow up with that customer. In the next example, there is a review, effectively, of a product. The product, again, doesn't matter, but it is interesting to try and understand more about that review without going through and having a human write down the good things, the bad things, the sentiment, things like that. So the Azure AI splits it into multiple sentences. So you'll see we have 4 sentences here, and it will tell us the sentiment and different opinions about specific things within that sentence. You can see that this one is mostly positive. There's one negative sentence, and it correctly detects that. But it also can see that the opinions, like, for example, the color they thought was beautiful, which is 100% positive. However, the sentiment of the zipper, where it's a negative feeling, is negative. So you can imagine having all of the feedback that you get about a product or about a company be extracted by a system that then lets the customer service representatives and the company glean valuable feedback from these reviews much faster. And then I briefly talked about this earlier, form recognizer. The idea that there are forms, PDFs, images, you name it, that we have that we'd like to get information from. Now, if things are PDFs, we've probably all seen that you can go copy image or copy text out of to get that information. But sometimes you only care about one piece of a document, and you have thousands of those documents. And so form recognizer is great at pulling out very specific key value pairs that you then want to use in your system later on. So given this example, this is a completely made up document that actually has nothing to do with SEC, but you can imagine that a similar like quarterly report would be valuable to extract information from. And so if you submit this to Form Recognizer, it will go and automatically look for interesting text, key value pairs, and perform optical character recognition to pull that text out. And if you go on to the next, you can see all of the different things that it will recognize, it will pull. And all of that is then put into key value pairs in the format of a JSON that is then provided to you after it has been analyzed. Additionally, it will provide some sample code that you can plug this into the application that you are trying to build. If you move on to the next slide, Debbie, there's an example of some of the key value pairs that were extracted from this document, as well as an example of the code that it provides for you. This is, I didn't touch this at all. This is all provided by the system, and you can use it to then plug it into your application to apply to whatever business need that you have. So that's quick coverage of some of the features that we have. There's a lot of cool stuff that you can do. And even further, there are a lot of customers out there that are already using Azure AI to streamline services or transform their business with Azure AI. There are a lot of forces like using AI. All sorts of industries are facing major disruption, fundamental changes to the way they work. Debbie, if you move on, there's incredible stats about Azure AI. There's all sorts of projected savings and fraud protection options and increased demand for products and services based on AI. AI is a very up and coming thing. Sherry has mentioned the popularity of ChatGPT that's out there, which is an AI-based chatbot, effectively, that can generate text. It's really quite fascinating, and I really encourage all of you to explore more about what is being done with AI these days, because it is really impressive. So for a couple customer stories, I did want to talk about a few that are using Azure AI currently. Moneris is a Canadian company specializing in debt and credit card payment processing. Moneris needed a unified data platform better to detect and protect against fraud. Obviously, we all know that fraud is a big thing, and somebody who is dealing with payment processing, really, it's really important in today's world of commerce that they protect our identity and protect against fraud. They rapidly implemented an automated flow for assessing and prioritizing risk using Azure AI. As our workflows evolve, the Azure AI factors increasingly protect against fraud. Moneris apparently saw a 450% reduction in the time spent identifying potential fraud, and saw an immediate 10% reduction in fraud. And they expect that number to increase as they develop and release new AI-powered capabilities. They now can detect fraud faster, analyze more risk indicators, and they spend about half the amount of money that you would spend on on-premise big data infrastructure. Next is some examples on how AI played a critical role in healthcare. These numbers show how international healthcare organizations are using bots to help COVID-19. During the COVID-19 pandemic, it was not only important to deliver medical care, but also to provide information to help people make decisions and prevent health systems from being overwhelmed. Microsoft's healthcare bot is one solution that uses AI to help the CDC and other frontline organizations respond to these inquiries, freeing up doctors, nurses, and other staff to provide critical care to those who need it. The healthcare bot service is a scalable Azure-based cloud service that allows organizations to quickly build and deploy AI-powered bot for website and applications. These offer patients and the general public personalized access to health-related information through a very natural conversation. And secondly, there's a Walgreen Boot Alliance, WBA, that wanted a chatbot technology to add to Walgreens.com. And obviously, something like COVID-19 really accelerates that interest. WBA used that Microsoft Healthcare bot service to add COVID-19 risk assessments to Walgreens.com, enabling people to find care better and understand how much demand was on a certain care facility. They also use the bot framework, which is part of the conversational AI offering, to add like a general question answer about things such as vaccinations and testing and similar things. During a time of increased online shopping and global health concerns, WBA was able to provide customers with important information quickly, while addressing call center staffing needs and serving as a triage for online telemedicine partners. There are hundreds of these customer stories, and if you'd like to see how other people are using Azure AI, I really encourage you to go to customers.microsoft.com, and you can explore all sorts of different industries and how they're using Azure AI. And at this time, I'd like to open it up to any questions.
Thank you, Ivor. It's really amazing to see all you can do with AI, and that engineer role is so important. I was wondering if the audience has any questions. We don't see anything in the chat. Feel free to put questions there or come off mute and ask questions. I love exploring all of the things you can do here and the ways people are using AI. Do all of our Microsoft certifications align? Do all of our Microsoft courses align to certification? And is that the recommended path that you would say, Ivor?
I believe all of the courses that we offer, all the ones that are numbered. So, for example, the AI engineer is AI 102. And AI fundamentals is AI 900. All of those that have an actual number do map to certifications. Now, there is additional content out there that don't necessarily map to an exam that's going to quiz you on it. For example, the OpenAI module that Sherry and I just released is something that people want to hear. People want to learn about ChatGPT, and the parent company that wrote ChatGPT is called OpenAI, and Azure has a great working relationship with them. And so something like that is available, but doesn't actually map to a certification or exam, but is a great place to learn about interesting technology and provide examples, get your feet wet with that type of thing.
That's a great point. Thank you for sharing that information. And Rick, thank you for your comment about the nice presentation. We're glad to hear that the content resonated with you, and I'm glad it's helpful. If there are no more questions, since we are running long or short on time, I guess is the better way to say it, I will just move into some of the resources that we have. I do want to pause and see Sherry or Ivor if you wanted to address this slide.
Yeah, sure. These resources are just a little bit of what you'll find in the deck. But when we talk about the Azure AI Fundamentals course, there's a link for the landing page that gives you all of that information, all of the learning material for that particular course. Same thing with Azure AI Engineering. One that we didn't talk about is Azure the Data Scientist certification, and that piece is really gets into the machine learning and designing solutions, machine learning solutions. And so that piece is also kind of an associate level, role-based level course. And that's really, if we're thinking about kind of where you might take your learning journey. Some folks go on from the Azure AI Fundamentals to Azure AI Engineering. Some of them first do the data scientist certification and then do the AI engineering certification. And so we really think of these three as kind of part of a learning experience about AI and machine learning. And then the final link is just the OpenAI service module that we've been talking about before. But in the appendix to this presentation, which we won't go into, you'll be able to see kind of the whole offerings of all the certifications, and that's also online as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sherry. Well, we want to thank New Horizons, first of all, for hosting this webinar, bringing you in to be an audience here. Thank you, Lori, for hosting us. And all of these courses and certification exam vouchers are available through our New Horizons partner here. So you might be wanting to know if you're going to get this presentation afterwards. So Lori, if there's anything you would like to add, please feel free.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And thank you, Ivar and Sherry. That was a wonderful presentation. And there's always something new to learn, right? We will have follow-up emails, and I'm happy to send out this recording to you if you would like it. Just let me know in the chat, and I can go ahead and pull that and send it to everybody if they're interested. And again, thank you for spending your time with us, and we appreciate you guys. Feel free to check out New Horizons for all of your Microsoft needs. Thank you so much.
Thank you.